I did my first 7-day water fast at Dr. Gracie's wellness clinic in Ohio, and my tumors never grew again after that. In fact, water fasting was the beginning of the end of cancer for me, and I began to feel healthier than I've ever felt and vibrant. If you're a cancer patient, you need to look into water fasting and begin to water fast immediately. Water fasting is not starvation, and water fasting is not cachexia where you can't gain weight, right? Where you can't keep food down. Those are two different things. Fasting is the intentional avoidance of food for the purposes of triggering a process called autophagy. And autophagy is where your body starts to clean up or eat its own cells. And after a couple days of eating regular unhealthy cells, your autophagy goes mega deep into your cancer cells, where your own body will start to eat and dispose of your cancer cells. And I'm not the only one. This is Dr. Thomas Seyfried, who is probably the leading cancer researcher in this country, along with Dr. Berg, who is a well-known functional medicine metabolism expert. So I first heard about fasting through Dr. Thomas Seyfried and his book, The Summary of a Metabolic Approach to Cancer, one of the best books that you will read on the journey. But as I began to do my own research, I found people like Dr. Berg and Mindy Pelz and Ben Azadi and so many other fasting experts in the space. But perhaps the biggest life-changing experience for me was the work of Dr. Alan Goldhammer, who has an amazing story in his own life in that he's never smoked a cigarette, never drank a drink, and is leading the country in remissions for cancer patients. Now, Dr. Alan Goldhammer has a fasting clinic, and he's got study after study of cancer patients who have flown into his clinic, and he watches over them with his staff, and they medically fast them for 7 days, 21 days, and even longer than that. In fact, the longest fast in the history of the world was 340 some odd days. A gentleman who was ginormous, this is overseas, and in that time, he was medically supervised, never had a medical problem, never had an emergency, but over the course of more than a year, lost all of his external body fat and became a healthier person. Water fasting is safe, and water fasting repairs the body through the autophagy process. So I called Dr. Goldhammer and I emailed his clinic and I told him about my situation. I'm stage 4, I'm terminal, I'm learning all about these metabolic non-toxic therapies. Am I a candidate for fasting? I got on the phone with Dr. Goldhammer and we had this great conversation. He's such a real guy because in my mind, he was kind of like the big doctor, you know what I mean? But he's on the phone talking with me and we went through this whole questionnaire. And what I learned from him is that most cancer fasts are around 21 days. But after I gave him my body weight and my size, because I was already doing like 3-day fasts and 24-hour fasts, and I was doing intermittent fasting and that sort of thing, he told me 2 things and they both broke my heart. Okay, the first thing that he said is that your body weight would only allow you to do a 7-day water fast and a 3-day refeed. He goes, so we wouldn't do 21 days with you. We would do 7 days. And then the second thing that broke my heart, I know you're thinking it's like it broke your heart. That sounds like great news, but it's like, no, guys, like my goal is not to beat cancer without any pain or hardship. To the contrary, beating cancer is the hardest thing you're ever gonna do. The second hardest thing you'll ever do is die from chemo and leave your family behind and be one of the last chemo victims of the 21st century, because everybody knows chemo's not gonna get you there. The second thing he said also broke my heart. He said, I have no room at the inn. He told me that his clinic was too full and they didn't have any space for me for months, and I almost lost hope there. But before he hung up the phone, he said this, but there is another option. I said, I wish you would have started with that, doctor. He said, one of my students, practicing clinician, has her own fasting clinic out in Ohio in Amish country. You could call her and you could see if she has any space for you. I said goodbye and I immediately began to look up Dr. Gracie's wellness clinic. That alone changed my whole life. So let me explain to you what it was like working with Dr. Gracie's wellness clinic. First of all, Dr. Gracie has this beautiful cottage-style home in Ohio, in Amish country. It's about 45 minutes from the airport. And we had to call her a few times and we had to leave a few messages before anyone was able to call us back. And at first that really annoyed me, but what I came to learn is that Dr. Gracie is so focused on a different way of living. on a holistic way of living, that she tends to her patients. And when she has time, she'll talk to more patients. When I got my call back, I was overjoyed because staying there was super affordable. And I want to go through some of the details with you of my stay at the fasting clinic. So number one was it was about $120 a day 2 years ago. She agreed that it would be about 7 days with a 3-day refeed, medically supervised in a single room, which means I rented a room. I had the whole room to myself, but she has other rooms that you'd share with a roommate. So there's different options there, and you pay a different price. I met so many amazing people. You will be there with other people. There are other people there who are fasting, but they're not all cancer patients, right? Some of them, most of them I felt were autoimmune patients or long-term chronic illness. So you will fly into Ohio, and then her driver picked me up from the airport and took me to Dr. Gracie's. It was about a 45-minute drive. And let me tell you, it wasn't a guy holding a sign with my name on it. I got picked up in a commercial van by a guy who looked like he knew how to grow things and fix things with his hands. It turned out to be that was her firsthand sort of custodial manager over the property, and he does all the repair work, and he picks up people from the airport. Was a great guy, very friendly. As we turned down the highway and onto the private road that leads to her property, I saw this beautiful home, complete with the sights of horse-driven buggies from Amish neighbors. There was a giant lake that carried the golden reflection of the sunset almost away into the evening. It was just about fall. The weather was starting to turn, but we still had a little bit of that summer heat, and it was a beautiful time to be in Ohio. And as I walked into the property and met Dr. Gracie, she's a tall, slender woman. She looked at me and she looked into my eyes as if to size me up with almost a deep hope. Like her eyes said, "Are you gonna make it?" And immediately I wanted to make her proud. Dr. Gracie had the Spirit of God in her whole countenance, and I knew as soon as I got there that I was in the right place. Now, before I went, I got a CT scan, and that was our before scan. And our plan at this time was to do one CT scan before the clinic, and then go to the clinic, and then get a CT scan after the clinic. Now, we did that for the sake of science almost. It's like, we want to document this and see if this is going to work. I probably wouldn't do that again today because of the amount of radiation that you expose yourself to. If you're going to do something like that, a non-radio procedure like an MRI might be a little bit more appropriate. Dr. Gracie had some house rules while I was there. First of all, there was no showering while you were fasting. She didn't want any, accidents, any bathtub accidents. So you couldn't shower while you were fasting. And if you're gonna walk around the property, you have to be seen by, you have to be able to see the property so the property can see you. You're getting weak, you're getting tired. She doesn't want anybody else, anybody falling downstairs. And then there was no coffee or tea, just water. And that is unpackable because, first of all, you've got to drink way more water than you think you need to be drinking. And in fact, my biggest mistake was I didn't drink enough water. I wish that I would have been more accountable to the water. She kept saying, "Are you drinking water?" And I was like, yes. But it was like, are you drinking enough water, right? Drink more water is really the thing. Drink more water. You should have goals every day. I wish I would have set more goals because I did experience a deep dehydration that was painful. And it prevented me from sleep. And I actually thought that because it was painful, it was good for me. And that's an interesting part of my psyche. But it's not. It should not be that painful, the dehydration. So you want to make sure that you're drinking water. It's a good reminder. And 2, drinking coffee and drinking tea don't necessarily reverse or undo a fast. But Dr. Gracie's a purist. And she had a conversation with me that fasting should be a time of fasting from really everything except for the fasting process. So no tea, no juice, no calorie-free this, no chicken broth, no olives. It's not a fasting mimicking diet. In fact, she recommended we fast from news, from media, from everything but the real physical world of books and feed in the grass and that sort of thing. And so I knew immediately that I wasn't going to do that because I had brought my own Starbucks dehydrated coffee and I kind of snuck it in, and I brought my own tea. So my intention was to just kind of break the rules a little bit, right? Because at the end of the day, I did drink the coffee outside, but I will say this. I drank it one day, and after that, I had no desire for coffee. I did not have a desire for tea. And so even though I brought these tools, I didn't use them. And I'm proud of that. It was a very pure water fast. So I also think you should get the Zero Fasting app. Now, you can get a free version. There's also a paid version. But this has been a major tool for me in my fasting to track the hours and to provide sort of, education and resources along the way, right? When you start a fast, Zero will be like, hey, I see you're 24 hours in. You're probably feeling this. You're probably feeling that. Make sure to drink more water, that sort of thing. Get that app. I think you can get away with probably just a free version for now, and then see if it's something you love. You can make that decision later on. But here's a big takeaway for everybody who is a cancer patient. Fasting is a deeply spiritual experience. And it doesn't matter what faith system you come from. Fasting will bring you face to face with what you believe. What you believe about the world, what you believe about God, and what you believe about yourself. I often think about fasting as the never-ending story. If you remember this movie from the 80s, I grew up on it. The lead character, Atreyu, he has to go face his greatest challenge, and that is coming face to face with himself. As he came face to face with who he is, he recognized that he's just a little boy reading a book. And that little boy is actually a warrior and the lead in a great story that never ends. Now, I'm a Christian man. I honor and I worship the Lord Jesus. And I praise God before I got sick. But as I sat there in that fasting clinic, about 2 days in, I broke and I ended up on the ground crying out to God to take this cancer from me. And he heard me. I don't know how to explain exactly what happened in my mind, but I had this imagery in my mind as I was praying and crying and like on the floor and I'm starving. And it's like, that's like the hardest part is like day 2 and 3. I saw a vision of the cancer in my body coming out of my body and it landed on the cross. And there's some of you out there that know what that means. It doesn't matter what you believe. Fasting is going to bring you to the end of yourself. And if you can make it through, you might just be cancer free on the other side. So I finished out my fast, day in and day out. I had solid routines to fill my mind and to fill my spirit during that time. Even though there's people there, it's awfully lonely time. Even though I could text my wife, it's an awfully lonely time. And so I had routines and I had systems that got me through it that I think are extremely valuable. And Dr. Gracie kept checking in on me. There was daily check-ins. She even offered chiropractic service while I was there and I was able to get adjusted and it felt like a massage and it was truly an amazing experience. I got done with the fast at 7 days. By the time I finished the fast, I could have kept going. I didn't even care anymore at that point. Like your body gets to this place of great joy and of great accomplishment. And like, even if you didn't make it to day 7, you made it to day 6. Wow. Who can say that? But I got to day 7 and let me tell you something, I was counting down the hours because I got to break my fast at 7 p.m. or 6 p.m. on the 7th day. And on that day, Dr. Gracie came into my room with the first food I had had in 7 full 24-hour periods. And it was a delicious tall glass of freshly blended watermelon juice. And as I put that back against my lips, you can only take a little bit at a time, right? And you just thank you, God, for watermelon. It's delicious. And then I think I got an avocado the next day. So it's not like you're jumping into food. But on that next morning, the morning of I think it was the 10th day, right? Because now I had done my refeeding. The driver came and picked me up. I said my goodbyes. I drove to the airport. And as soon as I got to the airport, I ate a chicken cordon bleu sandwich from the food court. And that is me being completely honest with you, absolutely transparent. Here's the thing. I knew I was going to eat that sandwich on the way to the airport. I was like, the guy was being so friendly and talking to me. And I'm like, I can't wait to get out of this car and go to the food court. I'm going to go to my gate. I'm going to find out where my gate is. Then I'm going to find a restaurant and I'm going to take my time and I'm going to hunt down a sandwich that I'm going to eat. Now, I enjoyed it. It was delicious and it was wonderful. And I don't think I undid my fast. I think the 3 days of refeeding was wonderful. But I did have a big bellyache and that was no good, because I had a long plane ride home. And as soon as I got home, we got a second CT scan. And that's what I want to share with you in the next video. I want to share with you the results of my CT scan. And I want to share with you the process I went through, the systems and the routines that I did during my 7 days to make the days pass and to get through it with excellence and with honor. So click on that video next. I'd love for you to watch it, and we'll see you there.